If only you dumbass, idiot-ass apes would listen to my advice and stop going against everything that I'm saying, maybe you'd be okay. Let me start over by saying you dumbass, moron, idiot apes will never understand because you do not have the intelligence to understand. Y'all are just retarded. In other words, let someone with a little bit, just a little bit of an intelligence, and that would be me, Ken Griffin, explain to you what in the hell you need to do because you're too dumb to understand. After that, you need to understand whatever in the heck I say in my interviews, I only say it to look, well, cool and like I actually give a shit, but I don't.
With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the markets plummeted early in the day that the invasion occurred. And at the end of the day, to the surprise of many people, including me, the markets actually ended up a bit. How could that have happened? Why did the markets gyrate so much?
So people often do not appreciate how forward-looking financial markets are. When a company announces a great quarter and you see the stock price fall, people go, well, I mean, how did that happen? It's because investors had anticipated an even better quarter. Markets are forward-looking by nature. This year, we've seen the market sell off quite a bit up to the date of the invasion of the Ukraine. Anxiety about higher interest rates, worries about the war. As the war broke out, though, the narrative changed. We started to talk about lower interest rates for longer. We started to talk about how different governments were going to react to this vis-a-vis Russia and the scope of the sanctions that would be unfolded. And the consensus over the course of the trading day was that the worst news was behind us, and the prospect of easier monetary policy, less draconian sanctions than feared, created a relief rally.
And do you expect that this will gyrate, these gyrations will continue for some time as long as Russia is in Ukraine, or you think the markets have basically made their assessment by now?
No, I think we're at a very, very, very volatile inflection point. It will come down to whether or not the Russians will be satisfied by simply extending their effective borders in the Ukraine. Will they take Kiev? Will they position themselves to reach beyond the borders of the Ukraine? The last is terrifying to markets, right? They will be adjacent then to much of core Europe if they move their military onto the western border of the Ukraine. And that has the markets concerned. So much will unfold over the days to come or weeks to come as Russia's ambitions become clearer.
Now, you and Neil Ferguson have recently co-authored an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, essentially saying that the sanctions that the United States is imposing on Russia may have some deleterious effects on the U.S., and particularly the energy markets. And if I got the article right, your point is that we should do more to free up Europe from dependence on Russian energy. Is that right?
That is a perfect executive summary. Number one is Europe is way too dependent upon Russian gas. And they've heightened their dependency by their rapid embracing of green policies. Now, to be clear, the world heading towards a lower carbon footprint is really important to all of us. The question is, how do you get to that place, and how fast do you get there? Europe became incredibly dependent upon Russian gas, given their speed of trying to reduce carbon emissions. And so what you have is you have a very interesting war dynamic. The Europeans are in some sense, they're victims of their own policies. They can't retaliate against Russia in any meaningful way because they are completely dependent upon Russian gas. And the money they send to Russia every day in buying that gas has given Russia incredible financial flexibility to fund the very war that's happening. If we want to send a message to Russia that their behavior is intolerable, making it clear that we will end this energy dependency on Russia is really important. Let's contrast that with what we're doing. We're imposing sanctions on Russia, limiting their access to U.S. technology, much as we've done with China. What's the upshot of that? We are hurting one of the leading parts of our economy, which is the big tech firms of the Valley that have driven so much prosperity for our country. We're forcing China to develop its own processors, its own software stack, and to be independent from America. And they're going to take those solutions and push them across their sphere of influence. So it's going to be much harder for Apple or Google or Microsoft to have a big success story in emerging markets like Africa, where China is going to try to now export their technologies aggressively as they seek to be independent of America. And by putting sanctions on American technology vis-a-vis Russia, all we're doing is accelerating that event. So I think that the American sanctions, although they may feel good in the short run, are really hurting one of our critical success stories in the world, which is our ability to develop technology. The second one, which hits home pretty hard to you and I, is the United States' weaponization of the dollar. The US dollar is the reserve currency for the world. That's an incredible asset for our nation, particularly as our nation is now facing record levels of indebtedness. When we put on the table the possibility that your dollars will become seized or you can't move dollars, we're telling the rest of the world to embrace other currencies in their portfolio, and we diminish the value of the dollar as the reserve currency. American taxpayers are going to pay for this in the form of higher interest rates on our debt. It hurts our country in a profound way.